Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we are unpacking history on a truly epic scale. We're talking about the meteoric rise and the honestly heartbreaking collapse of one of the most magnificent powers in southern India. I'm talking about the Vijayanagara Empire. We're going to dive into their political genius, their unbelievable cultural heights, and the rapid, brutal end that literally wiped a thriving metropolis right off the map.
Just think about this for a second. How does a city as large and as beautiful as Rome just end up in total ruin? It's a pretty haunting question, right? Because we aren't just looking at dry facts and dates today. No, we're tracing a grand, tragic epic. It's the story of a society that amassed unbelievable wealth, built architectural wonders that literally made music, and then, in a terrifyingly short amount of time, was just reduced to ash and rubble.
But to understand that epic fall, we really have to start with their rebellious origins. Back in the 14th century, while the Delhi Sultanate was getting, pretty politically unstable, a brand new powerhouse was quietly emerging down in the south. So the year is 1336, and two brothers, Harihara and Bukka Raya, decide they have absolutely had enough of northern rule. Now, they had actually served as governors under Muhammad bin Tughlaq, but eventually they just rejected Delhi's authority outright. They broke away, set up their own independent kingdom, and spent the entire 15th century fiercely defending those new borders against regional rivals.
Now here's a totally fascinating linguistic detail from this era. It's all about the suffix pati. Back then, pati meant lord or master, and let me tell you, it was a massive flex for ruling dynasties to use it. The Vijayanagara kings proudly went by the title Narapati, which translates to Lord of Men. But right to their north, their bitter rivals, the Bahmani Sultanate, called themselves Ashwapati, meaning Lord of Horses. And that right there, that brilliantly captures what was really going on. It wasn't just a battle over borders, it was a clash of competing ideologies and resources, a constant, really tense standoff between the lords of infantry and the lords of cavalry.
All that fierce defending in the 15th century definitely paid off, because by the time the 16th century rolled around, things hit an absolute fever pitch of success. This was the empire's golden age, hands down. And it was all driven by their most celebrated ruler, Krishnadeva Raya. Under his watch, the empire didn't just survive, it utterly dominated the Deccan region. But Krishnadeva Raya didn't just bring sheer military muscle to the table. He actually sparked this massive cultural renaissance, pouring unimaginable wealth into the arts and expanding their influence way beyond the battlefield.
And honestly, this is where we really see Krishnadeva Raya's intellectual depth. He wasn't just some warlord out winning battles. The guy was a serious intellectual. He patronized scholars across Sanskrit, Telugu, and Kannada, and, get this, he was actually a poet himself. He composed this incredibly famous Telugu epic poem called Amuktamal Yada. And nestled right in the middle of this epic is a section known as Rajaniti, which was literally his very own manual on royal policy and good governance. So the big takeaway here is that he was a leader who deeply thought about both the philosophical and the practical nuts and bolts of running a massive society.
That same cultural patronage, it showed up in some seriously spectacular architecture. If you were to step inside the Great Hall, the Mahamandapa, of the Vitala Temple, the intricacy of the carving is just staggering. But the truly mind-blowing part about these finely sculpted, monolithic pillars is that they're actually known as musical pillars. Just imagine walking through this huge stone hall, and when you strike the smaller columns, they literally ring out with different musical notes. I mean, it's incredible. It's sensory storytelling built straight into the stone. They essentially engineered their architecture to sing.
So, how did the rest of the world view this powerhouse? Well, let's check out a primary source. Foreign travelers absolutely flocked Vijayanagara for trade. The Portuguese, especially, were welcomed with open arms, mainly because they brought those precious horses, and Krishnadeva Raya wanted to make absolutely sure they weren't selling them to his enemies up north. VIP treatment was pretty much guaranteed. One Portuguese traveler, Domingo Paes, was completely blown away. He wrote, "This city seemed to me as large as Rome and very beautiful." He went on to say the people were countless in number and called it the best provided city in the world. He paints this incredibly vivid picture of a bustling metropolis, packed with lakes, gardens, and markets just bursting with international trade.
The coolest part is, we don't even have to just take his word for it. You can actually see it. This stone panel from the Vitala Temple perfectly captures that vibrant, wealthy society Pius was writing about. Just look at the carvings. They're totally packed with traded animals like horses and elephants, right alongside these highly equipped warriors. It's physical proof of a booming economy and a formidable military, permanently documented in the empire's own art.
Of course,
You really can't have an economy full of laden oxen and all this international trade without a super sophisticated financial system backing it up. I mean, think about it. How do you safely move massive amounts of wealth when political borders are constantly shifting and bandits are a real everyday threat? Enter the hundi system. It was this brilliant parallel network of credit and trust. Trading communities, like the Marwaris, used the hundi system to transfer funds across entirely different regimes, all without ever having to physically transport vulnerable bags of cash. It allowed unbelievable wealth to flow securely, completely cementing the empire as a global economic powerhouse.
But, as we know, history is rarely kind to golden ages. And this explainer takes a pretty dark turn right about now. In 1529, after winning countless wars and elevating his empire to just unprecedented heights, Krishnadeva died of an illness. That single year marks a sudden, truly devastating pivot. The great king was gone, and almost immediately the foundation of this seemingly invincible empire started to crack.
Let's just map out how shockingly fast it all fell apart. So Krishnadeva dies in 1529. A mere 36 years later, in 1565, the empire suffers a total cataclysmic defeat at the Battle of Talikota. And from that point on, it's just a slow bleed into fragmentation until the empire officially dissolves entirely in the mid-17th century. What took centuries of blood, sweat, and brilliant strategy to build was unraveled in just a few decades.
So we really need to confront what actually happened at Talikota, because it's brutal. The Deccan Sultanates, those rivals to the north we talked about, they finally set aside their differences, formed a massive coalition, and marched south. At the Battle of Talikota, the Vijayanagara forces, which were being led by Krishnadeva son-in-law Romaraya, were utterly crushed. But the horror didn't stay on the battlefield. The victors marched straight into the capital, the exact same city that Domingo Páez had compared to Rome, and spent several months methodically destroying it. The stunning palaces, the bustling markets, the musical temples, all smashed. The civilian population was massacred. The empire instantly shattered into smaller regions ruled by former military governors, the Nayakas. Just like that, a center of global wonder was reduced to haunting ruins.
Which brings us to a monumental what-if to end on today. What might have happened if the Vijayanagara Empire had actually won the Battle of Talikota? It really shows you how incredibly fragile history is. Just a change in battlefield tactics, maybe a slightly different political alliance, and the entire political and cultural map of southern India would look drastically different today. Who knows, maybe the Rome of India would have survived right into the modern era as a continuous, thriving global capital. It's a fascinating thought experiment, and it really underscores how quickly an empire's fortunes can turn on a dime and how deeply those turns shape the exact world we live in right now.